I'm David Bank. I'm the editor and CEO of ImpactAlpha. I'm so delighted to be here with Ava DuVernay, director, writer, producer extraordinaire, and Roy Swan, an old friend from the Ford Foundation, the head of mission investments. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Um, we want to talk about impact and film, which both of you are expert in. And the key thing is the financing for your recent film, Origin. And maybe you can tell us, just jump right in, how you thought about that project and how you came to produce it. And
Sure. Well, happy to be here. Thank you for having us. I'd always wondered whether or not there was a possibility for me to have, with the support of the Ford Foundation on the end of my film, like I always heard at the end of PBS documentaries, was there a space for nonprofit organizations to support narrative films, films with actors that were kind of studio level in scope, in the way that I knew that some finishing funds and small funds had been given to documentary films, as we see in public television. And so I asked the question. And I asked the question to my close colleague, Regina Miller, who's the executive director of Array Alliance, a nonprofit. And she said, yeah, I don't know. Let's ask some friends. So we took it to the Ford Foundation, Darren Walker first. Ford Foundation had been an ongoing, longtime supporter of Array. And he said, I don't know, let me ask somebody. And so then he calls Roy Swan, and together, Ford decided to be, I guess, kind of the signal funder, the first funder on, to say, let's try to put together something different.
And you had said, I think I've heard that you said you didn't want to spend all the time going to the studios and trying to get that movie made. You wanted to get it made this year. And
Last year.
sorry, last
Yeah.
year. And you got it made quicker with the impact investors that you found than you might have done in the other way, old way of movie making. So, Roy, how did you think about it, and how were you able to move so quickly?
Um, well, Regina is very persuasive, and that was a part of it. But even beyond that, um, when Ava's name is attached to something, and you look at the body of work, and you think about the Ford Foundation, we're in the business of hope, and we're in the business of betting on people who will help surface hope. And so, from our perspective, um, we were so delighted to have the opportunity to be involved with I don't know whether to call you a unicorn, a goddess, whatever it is. Um, you're a leader, a maverick, an icon. And it doesn't get any better than that, because at the end of the day, we're not expert in anything we invest in. We're always putting our faith in others to get done the type of work and drive the type of change that will help advance the human welfare. So it was our honor and privilege to have the opportunity.
Well, let's dig in a little bit on the impact angle of this, because just as we were getting ready for this discussion, the news came down that Participant Productions had shut down. I saw that you signed a letter the other day talking about the potential of social impact in film. One of the major backers of those kinds of projects now out of the game. Is this relationship and this model that you created something that can be expanded and replicated?
Oh, um, absolutely. You know, life is about, it's not about falling and skinning your knee. It's about what you do and how you get up and how you move forward. Um, there are lessons to be learned in the participant situation, but hope remains, and it's sitting right next to me.
Thank you. Well, a participant should be seen as nothing more than a triumph in terms of saying early on, when no one's thinking about mission investment or social impact investment or even impact as it related to films in a very formal way. Jeff Skoll and his colleagues at Participant were out fast, strong, and early in a very humble way saying, we believe that stories can change the world. I believe that deeply. And so how do we put architecture around that? How do we support that? And they did that at a high level. I mean, I had 2 projects with them, When They See Us, which was a piece about the Exonerated Five, which did incredible things as it relates to the public consciousness around um, uh, young people in the criminal justice system, and Middle of Nowhere, which was one of my first films that really dealt with the ways in which people who are outside of prison have relationships, connection, and communication with people inside of prison, and how we can preserve family relationships by doing better with the processes and the protocols of prison visits. And that was wrapped in a love story. And so, when we look at the success of Spotlight and Inconvenient Truth and all the things that Participant did, it's really a blueprint to say this can work. If has the right architecture around it, the right leaders around it, you can make things that actually change and shift culture. And so I applaud them. And the letter that I signed, which was signed by a lot of really wonderful creators, basically said, we need more. They've made the decision to shutter. And that opens opportunity for others to come in and fill that space and make it even bigger. We feel that the model that we have, been incubating and we practiced for the first time with Origin is one that will grow, will blossom, will hopefully be an example to others.
So, how do you think about impact? Like one of the things that Participant I think pioneered, and that your films have done as well, is you got to reach a big audience to have big impact. And so, is there just tell me what you see about like the appetite for those kinds of films in the sort of viewing public.
I think people want to see good films, and I also don't believe that impact has to be big to be influential. Impact is like it's like a wave. There are ripples. There are ebbs and flows to it. Something that you experienced 10 years ago may just be having an impact on your life right now. And so, something that I learned today, I might teach someone else who use it differently than I do 2 years from now. And so it's really about seeding in the principles, the ideas, the information that we want to share with folks and making it available. The wonderful thing is that about films is that they can be discovered and rediscovered and passed along, and they are recyclable. And so something that may not be have a huge impact on in the theatrical space may find a huge audience at Netflix. If it doesn't find it at Netflix or in streaming, it'll find it along the line on hard goods. People have been discovering my latest film more on planes and watching it on planes as they zigzag around the country than they saw it on theatrical. But still, that discovery is happening, and the message of the film is resonating in different ways. So I think, there's room for us to learn more about impact, and also to talk with folks that are investing in it about their goals and how we measure and what we value in that.
Let's talk about the movie itself, Origin,
Sure.
and how you made it. And do you think it was a different film because of the way it got financed and backed than it might have been in a traditional sort of studio context?
No question. Absolutely. First of all, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist. That film, you don't go to studios and say, you know what? I want to make a film. Oh my gosh, Ava, we're really interested in making film with you. What is it about? Cast. Okay, it's a big record scratch, and everybody walks out of the room. It's not the hot topic, and especially as we were talking about the nonlinear structure of it. It has tough historical sequences and a lot of personal pieces in it that are not a Marvel movie or a John Wick movie, and so I don't believe the film would be made and in the world right now. And certainly it would not have, if for some reason some studio did agree to it, it would not be the same version that you see, because in a studio context, in the studio world, it's profit based, and so we are trying to make the thing that is going to bring in the most money, as opposed to make the thing that tells the story in its truest sense in the way that it should be told. Those are two different lanes, and so this model allowed us freedom and allowed us to create exactly what we all set out to make, and that has a lot of value.
Roy, what was there about this project that made you and Ford Foundation want to back it?
Um, first I want to say that one of the one question that did come to my mind when I heard about this project was, well, first I said I need to read the book because at that point I hadn't read the book. But the second thing was after I read the book, which is incredibly powerful, my question was, how in the world is Ava going to make a movie out of this? But um, one thing I did know or strongly felt that is that if it went into the studio system based on what I knew about it, it was going to be so diluted, whatever the message was, that it wouldn't resonate in the way it could. And getting back to that point about impact, the messaging doesn't have to reach every person on earth. It needs to hit one person's um, PowerPoint,
Mhm.
because someone once said, never underestimate the power of one person to change the world. And that's what we have with this content. From our perspective, we knew that this film, to your point, would live forever, and we could just imagine the repurposing uh, of the content. And um, what was a such a pleasant surprise to me, which I didn't know about, was Array's work around creating teaching curriculum, which it doesn't get better than reaching young people at the point when they're coming into their own and their minds are most um, still being shaped. And so we saw this as uh, an opportunity to generate perpetual returns.
Let's pause because it's come up a couple times on Array. So just give us the brief on
Oh
Array.
yes, Array is a narrative change studio. It was founded. I founded it in 2010, and early on, I would make a commercial, make a music video, make a small film, and put my portion of the money into these ideas around using storytelling to change the world, in all kinds of different ways to disrupt the systems around filmmaking. Until one day, I got a call out of the blue from a guy named Darren Walker. Darren Walker's on line too. From where? Who's Darren Walker? Ford Foundation. Why is the Ford Foundation calling me? What do they want? What do they want? Cold call. Called me and said he'd seen a film I'd made called 13th. And he was interested in what I was doing with Array. How are you funding these educational and community initiatives? I was like, well, sir, I work. And who are you? Okay. And so he was astonished that I was working and putting my own money into these things. And he said, ma'am, don't do that. There's another way. Okay. And he really taught me. And he introduced me to Regina Miller, who, now is the architect of so much of what we do along these lines. And we're now a healthy, thriving nonprofit that is looking to disrupt the systems that ensnare and kind of keep content with purpose, kind of in a bottleneck in Hollywood, and say, look, I can't force Hollywood to care about this. Why don't we make it outside of Hollywood in a different way and reach audiences differently? And that's what we're working on.
So one of the impacts you got is get Roy to read the book Caste.
I did. That is an accomplishment. Each one teach one. That's how it goes.
I heard that you read it, I think, 3 times.
Yes.
And so just say, why you wanted
Yes.
to make it into a movie.
Well, the
Yeah.
book really explores the our place in the world and the way that we think about who we are in the world and how we engage with what's around us. And so many of us have been affected by this, this anthropological phenomenon called caste, but we really don't have a name for it. Sometimes we call it racism or we call it sexism. We call it all of these things, not understanding that there's a real architecture to it. It is made up of pieces of a puzzle, and in order to solve for a problem, you have to know all of the elements of it. And so as a society, we've kind of brushed past the idea of what caste is, which is really that there's the idea of human hierarchy, that when you walk into any room, according to society, some people are at the top and some people are at the bottom. If you walk into a room and there are men and women, men occupy and hold a space that is an elevated space in society, women differently, black, white, um, uh, tall and short. You know what I mean? All of the ways in which we divide each other and rank one another, and that each of those rankings contributes to an ism: sexism, racism, classism, Islamophobia, homophobia, anti-Semitism. All the things are based on this idea that is it okay to say that I am better than you based on a set of random traits? So that's what the book is about. How do you make a movie about that? That's what Roy was like. Hey, what is the movie? Well, the way that I made the movie is to tell the story of the author as she was researching the book. You go around the world with her. You also experiences the love and losses in her life as she is wrestling with what caste is. And so while she's learning about caste, the audience is learning about caste, and that's the film.
And the actress who plays Isabel Wilkerson at the end, I think anticipates a question which I think a lot of people have. Is so, like, what does that lead to? So we've been here at Mission Investors Exchange this week, and there's a lot of discussion about racial equity investing, racial healing, racial justice. Um, Roy and both of you actually, so how does these ideas of caste inform how folks might invest and move towards what in the earlier interview that we were talking about racial healing?
From my one of my hopes is that um, Origin or the book Cast, it's almost like an invitation to self discovery, and that is to get people to look at some of the preconceived notions, the conscious unconscious biases, and begin to ask themselves questions. Why? And it's only when you can get people to address and receive truths that there are some truths that are absolute. And once you get that, can they look themselves in the mirror and continue to embrace uh, immorality? Because ultimately, that's what it is. So that's probably the biggest hope that for me is for folks in my position to begin to ask themselves why they make the decisions that they do and what are some of the biases that they can now wrestle with and hopefully change their behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything that you said, and I mean, I think at the core of it is awareness. When you are aware, then the question becomes, now, what will you do? Right. And so storytelling is a huge part of that. I was reading the LA Times this morning. It was recounting, this is the anniversary of a famous case of a young actress who was actually murdered at her door by a stalker. And and it talked about in this case all of the things that had happened that people just didn't consider stalking. She showed up at the studio. The man showed up at the studio with flowers. He was sending crazy letters. But at that point, we didn't have the language. We didn't call it stalking. There were no laws around it. There was not an awareness that this is not just a kid who's a little obsessed, that this is dangerous. Once her life was taken, it resulted in stalking laws that cropped up around the world. Over 4 dozen laws that have cropped up and that are cemented in the culture, and that we have awareness of it. That is it talks about the shift in hearing a story, being affected by a story, being aware of it, and now putting some architecture around that to protect for it. You look at HIV and AIDS. I remember as a young girl being very afraid, not knowing what it was, just knowing that people were dying, and then seeing Philadelphia and thinking, oh, okay, wow, this is what I was most afraid of. Oh, they're touching. Oh, they're talking. Oh, they're friends. You see the issues around trans people, and the fact that there's just been there was a disconnect in people even having an awareness and an understanding of what trans people's realities were. And then there had been a series of work, film and TV shows in the last 10 years that have actually shown us that. And there's data to show public consciousness, public opinion shifting because people are aware and educated. And so I believe if anyone says that they have any interest in racial equity, in kind of the common good, it is about telling the stories that make all of this more normal to talk about. I mean, we have people who just feel uncomfortable even having conversations around race, class, caste, any of it. If we become more fluent and comfortable and aware, that's how society moves forward.
So those are the ripple effects.
The ripples.
Tell us a few of the ripples that you've observed or been seen since the movie came out.
Well, the film's been out since January, so we're just 5 months in. But certainly, the term caste is not even in the public consciousness in our lexicon, in our vocabulary. And so we are hopeful that as folks are kind of taking that in and really kind of ingesting the word, that it becomes applicable to the way that they're leading their life. We have seen, because the film is built in such a way that it appeals to people of all kinds, colors, and cultures, different different appeal to different groups of people. Some people see the film and see it as a film that's deeply rooted in grief. Some people watch the film and are amazed by the history that they're learning. So it's kind of built in a way, and I think these films. One of the things that I always talk up to filmmakers about who are interested in making social justice films is to really know that the thing you care about most may not be what you care about. What are the messages that you can put in that hits people at different levels of their understanding? In my documentary 13th, if you were an expert in the prison industrial complex, there was something in it for you. If you didn't even know that prison wasn't just a place where bad people go, you got something as well. So that layering of message is something that is within our film, and time will show and tell where those seeds are and how they blossom.
There's been a kind of a backlash. There was a wave of activism and commitments and pledges and whatnot in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. We're now, and it's been a major topic here this week, of a kind of backlash to DEI and other kinds of ways of framing that. And you said, I think, that you wanted the movie to be out this year to influence the actual debate that we're in around all these issues. What would you like to? How would you like that debate to be? How would you like the film to advance that debate?
I can't dictate what the film does, but as an artist, I make the work and I offer it as a tool for people to be in conversation with one another. Perhaps people not just in their corners pointing at each other and saying you're wrong, but the point of the film is to be a common place for there possibly to be some further understanding. I believe that one of the most sacred spaces one can find is the darkness and unifying space of a movie theater. You don't know who's next to you. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder with someone who could be thinking anything from any background, and yet you're trained on images and a story that is coming into your mind, your heart, your own personal history in many different ways. And so it's really just a beautiful process, storytelling. And so I think as we wrestle with this kind of I won't say black backlash, because that gives credence and credit to it, makes it feel it legitimizes what's happening. I believe. I think that we did not see what I would call activism, because I think that legitimizes what was happening at the time. I think it was all performative, and now the performance is over. I don't believe that any of it was deeply rooted, true, and true work was done to build it. Because when you build something, you got to lay a foundation, and then you got to put this brick on and that brick on. You can't just put up a black square and say I've done the work. And so what I think we're finding now is folks who were performing care, performing community, performing courage, now deciding that they want to get off stage. The question is, who's left? And can we still tell the stories and do the things that we're supposed to do?
Roy, that's a good entree for what the Ford Foundation's been trying to do. So maybe just take that of how do you build that foundation as a foundation?
Well, one of the things that we try to do is figure out, I guess, what is the honey that will attract people, as opposed to the vinegar or the finger wagging or the criticisms that in many instances would be justified. I mean, I'm old enough to have seen several of these cycles of false promises. The nice thing about this time around is it lasted a lot longer than the Rodney King set of false promises. And so what we try to do is we try to be plain spoken about, I'll take a simple concept like DEI, and it's been weaponized to mean something really, well, DEI just means fairness. So if we understand that DEI just means fairness, then do you want to be fair or unfair? And choice is yours. We just want to, we try to speak in a language that people can hear, and then make decisions. So I would say that if, as a black man, if you are well trained by your parents, you are taught what to expect. Great parents give you the foundation and the fuel to walk into those headwinds. And one of the nice things about being a black man is I need to understand not just white people. I got to understand, how do I navigate within the environment so that every time I walk in the room, when I know um, the psychological and biological impact I will have on people, they will see a black person. I then have to think about, how can I let these folks know that I want the same things they want as relates to the common good. And once we develop those types of commonalities, then it's easier to have conversations. So for all the false promises were done. I can't argue with the performances, because that's what people felt was needed at the time to speak to their customer base. Because at the end of all this, it's all about economics of the situation. Things have blown over, but that episode is yet another opportunity for us to take it, package it, and communicate it in a way that we hope continues to move the ball forward.
And Ava, I think I heard that you didn't have at the end of that movie another project, but I imagine you might now. So what's next?
Oh gosh, am I going to break news? Breaking news that people want to know right here?
You get asked that a lot.
I don't know. I'm going to hold on to it a little bit more, but I'm circling. They call it circling. Have you heard this term?
Yeah.
She's circling a project. It's silly.
Like waiting to get the plane to land.
No, just yes. No, just trying, just moving around it to see if I want to land. So thinking about a couple things, but excited about what's ahead.
And since I put Ava on the spot, I'll put you on the spot. Roy, you going to fund that project?
Um, I can't imagine not funding something that Ava's going to do. We
Good
are
answer.
investors.
Thank you for the help. I appreciate it.
No, we are investors, so we go through our diligence, but we're engaged in this, and um, my job is to. I'm only successful if Ava's successful. So that's what we do. We are successful through others, and we have a unicorn and a goddess. So we're
I'm gonna run with that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to both of you.
Enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.